Welcome to the Ramayana, Stories of Dharm and Devotion. I'm Sandeep, your storyteller, guiding you through the eternal journey of Valmiki's Ramayana. Our narrative draws deeply from Valmiki's original text and is enriched with stories from other Indian traditions, offering you a complete and immersive experience of this eternal tale. In our previous episode, the silence of the sea finally broke. Ram's fury, fierce and righteous, shook the heavens, not out of rage, but to awaken dharm from its slumber. As the ocean rose with folded hands, it revealed its hidden path, and the Vanar Sena marched forward, their hearts ablaze with devotion. In today's episode, we stand at the threshold of war. Portents stir the skies, wild omens ripple through nature, and Ram, with the eyes of a seer and the soul of a king, explains their meaning to Lakshman. Far away in Lanka, fear begins to creep through Raavan's palace. A demon once proud of his kingdom might now starts to measure the strength of the enemy. Spies are sent, secrets are shared, and amidst it all, we meet the leaders of the Vanar army, giants of strength, courage, and loyalty. As Shuk and Sharan return with tales of unstoppable force, Raavan's anger turns to unease. His commands grow harsher, his trust weaker. Doubt begins to claw at his throne. But while Lanka trembles behind golden walls, Ram stands tall, looking down upon the city of darkness. Join me now as we walk with Ram to the gates of Lanka, where dharm prepares to confront deceit, and every heartbeat echoes the call of destiny.
As dawn broke on the edge of the ocean, a strange stillness settled across the Vanar camp. The vines grew restless. The sky wore an uneasy shade, and in that silence, Ram, whose eyes missed no sign of fate, stood still, watching the earth speak in omens. He turned to Lakshman, his voice calm, but heavy with forewarning. Ram said, "O Lakshman, I have walked many lands, crossed forests and mountains, and witnessed the turning of many seasons. But never have I seen nature grieve so loudly. These are not signs of peace, they are cries before a storm." The vines carried dust thick enough to choke the light. Trees bent as if bowing to a force unseen. Mountains trembled. Wild animals shrieked in confusion. Birds flew without direction, and jackals howled as though mourning a war not yet begun. The sky, once blue, now burned with a copper hue. The clouds, stained like blood, let loose rain not of water, but of dread. Ram pointed to the horizon where the sun dimmed behind a black veil. He said, "The world itself recoils. Lakshman, these are the portents of a colossal war. A battle so fierce that even the heavens hold their breath. Many heroes shall fall, monkeys, bears, and demons alike. The earth will drink blood. The skies will burn." Lakshman listened with solemn eyes as Ram, ever the protector of dharm, stood tall against the tide of destruction that was to come. Without delay, Ram gave his orders. He commanded, "Let the army be divided into battalions. Sugriv, Vibhishan, prepare the Vanars. Let their strength not scatter, but move as one. Today, we march for Lanka, not as wanderers, but as warriors led by justice." The conches blew, the monkeys roared, giants with golden manes and mountain-like shoulders stood ready, gripping rocks, trees, and iron maces. From behind them came Vibhishan, eyes steady, heart torn between past and present. Beside him stood Sugriv, fierce and loyal, voice echoing across the battlefield. And at the front, bow in hand, walked Ram, calm, unshaken, divine. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. His presence alone pulled the army forward. The Vanar Sena surged like a wave of fury. The dust beneath their feet rose in clouds. Their cries shook the very skies above Lanka. As Ram led them from the shores of Suvela mountain, the earth itself seemed to follow. The final march had begun, not for conquest, but for restoration. The darkness of Lanka was about to meet the light of justice. And at the center of it all, Ram, the hero, the prince, The divine warrior walked silently as destiny unfolded with each step. From the peak of Suvela mountain, Ram stood silently. Below him stretched the golden city of Lanka, perched high upon rocky cliffs, glistening with towering spires, wrapped in gardens and walls that seemed to rise into the sky. Bright flags danced in the breeze. The sound of drums echoed like distant thunder. It was a city built by magic and might. And now it stood on the edge of its reckoning. Ram's gaze grew distant. His heart stirred with longing and sorrow. He said softly, "There, Lakshman, in that splendid city held high above the sea, is where Sita waits, held captive like the gentle Rohini star, swallowed by the red shadow of Mars. Her eyes, like those of a frightened deer, search the skies for a sign. And that sign must now come from us." Then, with the calm resolve of a seasoned commander, Ram turned from the city to the warriors beside him. He declared, "The time has come. Let the army be drawn up according to scripture. Let every battalion know its place. Let every warrior know his duty." The orders rang clear across the ranks. Angad would lead the center, his force like a tidal wave of fury. On the right, fierce Rishabh, commanding Vanars by the thousands. To the left, mighty Gandhamdan, strong as a ragging bull. Jambavan, the ancient bear king, along with Sushen and Vegdarshi, would protect the vulnerable belly of the army. Sugriv, king of the Vanars, would guard the rear with unwavering strength. And at the front, bow in hand, dharm in heart, stood Ram with Lakshman by his side. The monkey legions, roaring, thunderous, overflowing with strength, took formation. They clutched mountain peaks. They pulled up trees as weapons. In their hearts was one fire, to rescue Sita and destroy Raavan. Then Ram spoke once more. He said, "Sugriv, release Shuk, the demon spy. Let him return. Let him speak. Let Raavan know what comes for him." And so, with respect for the rules of war, even toward a spy, Shuk, battered and fearful, was set free. Wings bruised, body trembling, he flew across the field and entered the palace of Raavan. Raavan laughed when he saw the state of his messenger. He mocked, "Your feathers are missing, Shuk. Were you greeted with garlands or fists?" Shuk bowed, his voice shaking. He said, "O king, I did as you commanded. I spoke with civility. But the Vanars, they're not beings of protocol. They are storms bearing fur. They fell upon me without pause, beating, plucking, roaring. And Ram stands now at your gates." He paused, trying to steady his breath. He continued, "Ram has crossed the ocean, built a bridge by sheer will. His army, bears, monkeys, warriors of immense strength, cover the earth like a flood. They hold no fear. They roar for justice. And Sita is their goal. You have but two choices. O king, return her, or face them." Raavan's smile vanished. His eyes narrowed, red like burning coals. He rose from his throne, rage pouring from every word. He said, "Do you think I fear this man? Even if the gods themselves stood beside him, Indra with his thunder, Varun with his waves, Yam with death, I would not return Sita. Let Ram come. Let his monkeys come. Let them witness the sky blaze with my arrows." He raised his bow and roared, "My bow shall sing the music of death. My arrows shall be its notes. The battlefield shall be my stage, and Ram's army my audience. They will know why I am called the terror of the three worlds. He has not seen the fury of Raavan, but he will." His laughter echoed like thunder in a storm. But outside, beneath the gaze of the gods, Ram stood silent, steady and waiting. The time for words passed. The shadow of war had fallen, and Lanka was now surrounded by fate. Raavan, seated in his jeweled court, narrowed his eyes and turned to his ministers, Shuk and Sharan. Doubt lingered on his face, hidden behind a veil of pride. Then he leaned forward, voice low and sharp. He said, "Disguise yourselves. Blend into their army. Count them Measure their strength, know their leaders. Learn who stands at their front, who guards their flanks. Find the one who commands. Learn the secrets of their bridge, their weapons, their intent. Then return. And tell me the truth. Obeying at once, Shuk and Sharan cloaked themselves in illusion, taking the shape of monkeys, and slipped silently into the roaring tide of the Vanar Sena. Shuk, though just recently released by Ram with unexpected mercy, hesitated. The memory of being beaten by Vanars, and then spared by the very man he came to spy on lingered in his mind. Something about Ram's calm strength, his fairness even to enemies, had unsettled him. But loyalty to Raavan, his king, his commander, still held weight in his heart. So, despite the gnawing doubt within him, Shuk followed the order, silencing his thoughts and stepping once more into danger, this time not just as a spy, but as a reluctant witness to something far greater than war. But what they saw next left even these seasoned spies shaken. The army stretched beyond counting, on cliffs, in valleys, beside waterfalls and forests. Some still crossed the sea. Some already stood on the other shore. Their cries pierced the skies. Their bodies, vast and powerful, stirred the very earth. It was not an army. It was a moving mountain, and at its heart stood the flame of its purpose, Ram. But before they could slip away, Vibhishan, wise and watchful, spotted their unfamiliar aura. In an instant, he seized them and brought them before Ram. The two demons trembled. They had seen the strength of the enemy, and now stood before the very soul of it. They cried, hands joined, voices shaking, "O Ram, we were sent by Raavan to observe, not to harm. We came to understand the strength that marches toward Lanka." Ram looked upon them, not with anger, but with calm certainty. He asked, with a slight smile, "Have you seen enough? Have you counted the warriors? Felt the weight of the army? Then go. You are free." The spies looked up, stunned. Ram continued, his voice resolute yet filled with grace, "You were sent without weapons. Messengers must not be slain. Vibhishan, release them. Let them carry my message to Raavan." He turned toward the south, his gaze fixed on the distant golden city. He said, "Tell him, the strength he once relied upon when he stole Sita, let him bring that now. Let him gather all his demons, his magic, his rage. For at dawn, I will rise like the storm of Indra, and I will strike his walls, his armies, his pride. Nothing shall remain. If he wishes to avoid this ruin, let him return Sita. But if he chooses battle, then let the battle come." Shuk and Sharan, overwhelmed not just by Ram's strength, but by his justice, folded their hands and bowed. "May you be victorious, O Ram," they said with sincerity, and flew back to Lanka. Before Raavan, they stood again. But now, their voices had changed. The fear was real. They said, "O king, we saw the army. But more than that, we saw four great beings together. Ram, Lakshman, Vibhishan, Sugriv, each one a mountain, each one a fire. Even without the Vanars, they could tear Lanka from the cliffs and cast it into the sea. Their resolve is unshakable. Their poise is just. Their weapons shine with divine light." They paused and then continued, "Ram spared our lives. He could have destroyed us. But he did not. Such power, bound by such compassion, is not to be trifled with. Return Sita. End this war before it begins. For no power in this world, not gods, not demons, can stand against what now marches for Lanka." But Raavan said nothing. His fists were clenched. His pride would not bow. And above the city, the sky darkened. For dawn was coming, and with it, the fury of dharm. But in the silence that followed, Raavan's mind stirred restlessly. Why? Why did Ram keep releasing his spies, even after catching them red-handed? Why not punish at least one? Why give him no excuse to paint Ram as unjust? How can one man be so perfect, so measured in strength, yet so restrained in power? Was he truly just a man? Or was he what the sages whispered? What even some Rakshasas feared to say aloud? Vishnu, Raavan, once feared by gods and demons alike, felt a sliver of something foreign, doubt. In the stillness of his chamber, away from his ministers, Raavan closed his eyes and folded his hands, not in fear, but in a moment of reverence. And he whispered into the dark, O Lord Shiv, Mahadev, you, who watches over both creation and destruction, bless me. Give me the courage to face him. For if I must fall, let me fall with fire. But if there is still a path of victory, let me find it with your grace. And outside, the wind howled. The ocean crashed, and the stars faded, one by one, as the first light of war began to rise. While the winds of war gathered outside Lanka's walls, within the palace, echoes of the courtroom's proceedings spread, like whispers in a hall of mirrors, reaching to hearts separated by fate, yet bound by truth. The first was Mandodari, queen of Lanka, consort of Raavan, and a woman of great wisdom. She had listened quietly as reports came, Ram's mercy, his unshakable dharm, his unmatched strength. The release of spies not once, but again and again. The warning was issued, not with hatred, but with clarity. The march of Vanars across the ocean. The might of Lakshman. The loyalty of Vibhishan. The silence of Raavan. And that silence terrified her. She entered the chamber where Raavan sat alone, his eyes fixed on the night sky. She said gently, My lord, you are mighty. No one questions that. But perhaps true strength lies not in defiance, but in discernment. Raavan looked at her, unmoving. Mandodari continued, her voice steady, This Ram, he is not like the others. He is not a king blinded by power or vengeance. He has crossed the ocean not to conquer, but to restore. He gave Vibhishan a place when you gave him exile. He spared the messengers when you would have executed them. He asks not for gold, not for Lanka, only for his wife. Let us not wait for the skies to fall before we open our eyes. Make peace. Return Sita. There is no shame in choosing what is right. But Raavan said nothing. A storm raged inside him, louder than any voice in the room. And far away, in the Ashok Vatika, the second voice stirred. Trijta, the old Rakshasi who had once dreamt of Ram's victory, approached Sita, who sat beneath a tree, her face pale, her heart weary from months of sorrow. Trijta knelt beside her and whispered, Devi, there is hope. Sita looked up, eyes wide. Trijta said, her voice trembling not from fear, but from awe. I've heard news. Ram has crossed the ocean. His army now camps outside Lanka. The same Ram whom the sea itself surrendered to, he has come. Tears welled in Sita's eyes. Trijta continued softly, and more, I heard that Raavan's spies were caught and brought before Ram. But instead of punishing them, he let them go. He sent them back with a message, not of cruelty, but of warning. Your Ram is not just a warrior, he is dharm itself. Hold on, Devi. The end of your sorrow is near. Sita closed her eyes, clutching the edge of her sari to her chest. A breeze stirred the trees above, and for the first time in many moons, she breathed without pain. Ram was here. Sita's eyes shimmered with tears, not of sorrow, but of hope. She pressed her palms together, lifted her gaze to the sky, and whispered, O Lord Mahadev, you are the great witness of time and fate. I have held on this long only through your grace. If Ram has come, then let your blessings guide him. Let truth rise. For the first time in moons, she saw not just the garden shadows, but the light at the end of the tunnel. Somewhere far across the palace walls, that same hope was being fought with fire. Inside the royal chambers of Lanka, as Mandodari's voice of wisdom still hung in the air, another figure stepped in, cloaked in armor, fire in his eyes. Indrajit, son of Raavan, master of dark spells, and Lanka's fiercest warrior. He had heard his mother. He had heard her plea for peace. But his voice rang with pride and defiance when he said, Mother, I respect your wisdom. But we are not new to war. We have faced the fiercest gods. We have humbled Indra himself. This army that comes across the sea, let them come. We have triumphed before. We will triumph again. I offer my life, not for father alone, but for Lanka's honor. Raavan turned to him, a flicker of pride on his face. Indrajit continued in his sharp tone. Shuk and Sharan failed perhaps because they were not the best. They were too obvious, too slow. If we want the truth, we must send someone better, someone invisible. Let Shardul, our finest, go. He sees what others miss. He moves like a shadow. Raavan nodded slowly. He said, send him. And so, Shardul, the silent demon spy, was dispatched, slipping into the night, wrapped in illusion, his senses sharp as a blade. He crossed the wind-swept cliffs. He slipped past the echoes of roaring Vanars. He reached the outer edges of the camp. But fate, once again, had different plans. Even before Shardul could draw breath, he was seen. Vibhishan, ever watchful, caught the scent of deceit. Shardul was seized, his disguise shattered by the sharp eyes of Ram's allies. Shardul, once confident in his stealth, now stood frozen in the grasp of truth. Vibhishan, who had once served Raavan, looked upon the spy with calm, not cruelty. But instead of raising an alarm or drawing his sword, Vibhishan did something unexpected. He said, "You seek knowledge of our strength? Then listen, for I know what Ram would choose. And it is not fear, not secrecy, but open courage." And there, with the might of Ram's army encamped across the shore, Vibhishan revealed all, the ranks of the Vanars, the power of their leaders, the battle positions, the very soul of the formation. Not with arrogance, but with confidence born of righteous strength. Word reached Ram that another spy had been caught. But Ram, hearing what Vibhishan had done, only nodded, his voice gentle. "You did well, Vibhishan. What must be hidden by those who walk in truth? Let Shardul return and tell Raavan everything. Let him know exactly who stands at his gates. Let him see what awaits him, not hidden in shadow, but rising in full light." And so, Shardul, stunned by such unexpected nobility, was released. He flew back, heavy with the weight of what he had seen, not just armies, but a spirit he could not describe. In Raavan's court, he reported everything, every division, every formation, the strength of Angad, the ferocity of Neel, the storm that was Sugriv, the ancient power of Jambavan, and the deadly calm of Lakshman. And at the center of it all, Ram, whose presence alone had shaken Shardul to his core. But it was not just the strength that enraged Raavan. It was the location. Shardul spoke the final words carefully. "My lord, they are encamped at Suvila mountain, no more than a whisper away from your walls. The very cliffs that once protected Lanka. Now watch its enemies gather." Raavan's face darkened, his fists clenched. Suvila, once a stronghold of Lanka, now a perch for the enemy. It was not just an army that had come. It was a reckoning, and in the deep of night, with fury boiling in his chest and silence pressing in from all sides, Raavan rose from his throne and walked alone into the shadows of his golden halls. The night had grown still, save for the distant roar of the ocean and the soft murmurs of an army camped in silence. Suddenly, a silver light shimmered across the land, casting long shadows on the rocks of Suvila. The Vanars stirred, looking up at the sky. "The moon?" someone cried. "It has finally risen." And indeed, it looked as if Moon himself had broken through the veil of clouds, his full glory now sailing across the forest of stars. Ram smiled at their musings and said warmly, "Brothers, tell me, what is that blackness in the moon's heart? What does your heart say?" Sugriv, leaning forward, replied first, "O Ram, that is the shadow of the earth. It's our own darkness, reflected in the face of the moon." A Vanar behind him said, "No, no, it is Rahos' wound, the mark left when the demon tried to swallow the moon." that scar remains. Another offered with a grin. When God Brahma created the face of Rati, wife of Kamdev, he took the essence of the moon to give her beauty. In doing so, a hollow was left in the moon's heart. That hole allows the darkness to seep in. Ram laughed gently at their imagination. He said, eyes lifted to the silver disk, or perhaps poison is the moon's closest kin. When Lord Shiv drank poison, the moon sat upon his head to cool the fire. In return, it took a bit of that poison into itself. And now, it spreads its rays, soft yet sharp, burning those who lie awake in separation. The Vanars nodded, their laughter quieted by the beauty of his words. Then Hanuman stepped forward, folding his hands. He said, voice full of devotion, O Lord, the truth is simple. The moon carries your reflection. Your dark, divine form lives in its heart. That shadow is not sorrow, but your presence. Wherever the moon shines, it reminds the world of you. Hearing Hanuman's gentle words, filled with love and deep devotion, Ram laughed softly. It was a laugh not of amusement, but of peace, the kind that comes when the heart is touched by truth. He then turned his gaze toward the southern sky, where dark clouds seemed to gather. Ram said, O Vibhishan, look there. Do you see how the sky is swirling? The clouds are rising, lightning is flashing, and the thunder is soft but strange. I hope this is not a storm preparing to bring down heavy hail. But Vibhishan, who knew Lanka better than anyone, looked closer and understood immediately. He said, O Ram, that is not a storm. What you see is not lightning or thunder. He pointed toward the highest point of Lanka's palace. He said, that glowing peak is Raavan's royal hall. Right now, he's watching a performance, music and dance, meant to distract from the war that's coming. That large black shape above him, that's not a storm cloud, it's a giant ceremonial umbrella he wears over his throne, dark and heavy like the sky itself. The flashing light you see is from Mandodari's earrings, swinging as she moves with the rhythm of the music. And the sound of thunder you hear, that's the sound of their royal drums echoing through the palace. Surprised, Hanuman's sharp eyes narrowed. Indeed, that wasn't the moon. High above, on the balcony of the golden palace, stood Raavan, clad in black robes that danced in the breeze and crowned with a diadem that glowed like a silver flame. He stood still watching. His crown, encrusted with diamonds and moonstones, reflected the light of the stars so brightly it fooled even the heavens. It was not the moon that had risen, but Raavan himself, a shadowed monarch standing on his final summit. Ram said nothing. He just smiled calmly. Then quietly, he lifted his bow. With steady hands, he drew a single arrow. There was no chant, no warning, only the silent hum of truth being released. And in a heartbeat, across the sky, unseen by all, the arrow flew, straight and silent like fate itself. Within Raavan's court, at the height of celebration, the mood shattered. The giant black umbrella above Raavan's head was cut clean in half. His crown, that was shining like the moon, fell to the ground, and Mandodari's earrings, bright like silver lightning, clattered onto the marble floor. No wind was blowing, no hand was seen, and yet these symbols of power now lay broken. The court froze. Dancers stood still. Musicians dropped their instruments. A chill swept through the room. One minister whispered, "What just happened?" No one touched them. Then how did they fall? Fear gripped every heart. Was it an omen? A sign of doom? But Raavan, proud and unshaken, stood tall and laughed. A cold, defiant laugh. He said, "Ha! For one who has always walked with death, what is a fallen crown? Even when heads fall around me, I do not bow. This means nothing." He smiled outwardly, but inside, a question had already begun to rise, a silent fear he would never admit. And outside, Ram's arrow had already returned to his quiver, unnoticed, as if it had never left.
In this episode, we entered a realm where silence spoke louder than war cries, and divine restraint shattered illusions more powerfully than any weapon. We saw how Ram, even when standing at the threshold of battle, held fast to justice, not as a strategy, but as a way of being. He released spies who came to betray him. He welcomed truth, even when others sent deceit. And in that quiet strength, we saw the kind of power that does not need to shout, because it already moves the world with grace. We witnessed Raavan's court, not shaken by sword or flame, but by an unseen arrow, one that cut through pride and pierced the heart of his kingdom without spilling a drop of blood. A single gesture from Ram, and the symbols of vanity fell to the ground like leaves in a divine storm. We listened to the voices of wisdom, Mandodari's plea for peace, Trichta's message of hope, and Sita's quiet prayer to Mahadev, as the first light of Ram's presence reached her heart. Even as the city of Lanka prepared its illusions, the light of dharm rose that was calm, unwavering, and absolute. Join me in the next episode as the final pieces fall into place. Ram's army now stands at the gates of Lanka, not just as soldiers, but as carriers of truth. The winds shift. The time draws near. The last veil will soon lift. And when it does, the battlefield will become the stage for the greatest reckoning in history, where love, duty, and destiny face off against pride, illusion, and fear. The storm is gathering. The flame of the dharm burns steadily. And Ram is ready. Please share this podcast with your loved ones and let the timeless lessons of the Ramayana inspire your journey. Though the details of this ancient tale may vary across traditions, its essence reminds us of the enduring power of compassion, courage, and hope in the face of adversity. Until next time, may the light of dharm illuminate your path and fill your heart with peace.